start off of like how you guys broke into this industry. What was your first job? What were the first steps that you took when you were trying to break into the film and TV industry?
Well, my first gig, actually, I got from Craigslist. People don't believe me when I say that, but it's true. So before I moved to LA, my husband and I were living in Portland, Oregon, and I knew I needed some experience before I came down here. So I went on Craigslist, and I did a bunch of like unpaid, like production assistant gigs for like student short films, like a couple web series, and then Grimm posted on Craigslist that they were looking for additional set PAs, and I thought it was a scam. And my husband's like, you know, the worst thing that could happen is that you apply and they don't respond to you. So I sent a resume, didn't think anyone was going to actually reach out to me, and they did. So I had an interview, and they hired me as an additional set PA, and I just kept saying yes every time they called me. And that turned into me becoming a staff set PA, and I did background pay for them. So that was my first gig.
Awesome.
I started interning at HBO when I first moved out here, and then I stayed on as a temp. They used to have this cool in-house temp pool where you could float around different people's desks and act as an assistant for that day. And I kind of came in through a side door of actually acting and comedy with this sort of like overlap that's going on or has gone on for a really long time of like the actor, writer, comedy performer, UCB stuff. So I started meeting people through UCB. I left HBO temping. My parents were very pissed off. And I just went sort of harder at acting. Always writing scripts on the side, but got a commercial acting agent, and then from there got a acting agent, and then from there got a writing manager who would send late night comedy shows when they're hiring. They send out packets, like submission packets to various companies like 3 Arts or Brillstein where I'm at, or agencies as well. And a lot of them don't get read, a lot of them go in piles that don't get read. I happened to get read in this for this True TV comedy show, and that was sort of the moment I felt like I broke in and got my first credit.
I hope this doesn't sound like a cop-out answer. I got my first job when I graduated college. I just annoyed everyone. I annoyed friends of friends, people I had met through professors. I always wanted to stay towards the top of their inboxes. So eventually I wore them down. I got a set PA gig that led to an office PA gig. As you'll find with TV, or if you work in TV, it's very incestuous. So they tend to keep you around if they like you. Eventually I finished a writer's PA gig on a show, and it was my last day. I didn't have another job yet. I was walking around the set, around the lot, and I saw 2 post-production producers walking the other way. I had worked with them on a previous show. They stopped me, asked what I was doing next. I told them I didn't know. They pointed to a building. They said, well, we have a line producer interviewing an assistant in there. Do you want to go interview with him? I said, sure. That ended up being This Is Us. And so I worked for our line producer, Steve Beers, for a little bit. And when the pilot was shot and done, I moved on over to Dan.
So this is going to be a little bit the same as Caroline's for most of it, but I went to school for screenwriting, and both of us wanted to be TV writers, which at the time was pretty rare. They had 2 TV classes offered. One was writing for drama, one was writing for sitcoms. So we took the sitcom writing class, and it was taught by the only professor in the whole department who was actually a working writer, who was only teaching that class because she wanted to get her kids into the daycare at the college. And so she kind of became our mentor, and a couple of years after school, we continued sort of like working for her for free. And one day she called us up and she was like, oh, I just got this show on Netflix called One Day at a Time. Are you guys still writing together? Would you be interested in maybe sending us a sample? And we were like, no, we're good. We'll just keep being assistants. So we said something to her that night, and then we had our staffing meeting on the Monday after that, and then we got the job and then didn't do anything for 6 months until the job actually started. Not didn't do anything, but we were like, we're rich! And then there was like 6 months of now where we weren't rich. And then, so we started working on the show one day at a time, and now we're here.
After college, so that teacher was Gloria Calderon-Kellett, who now is the showrunner of One Day at a Time. When I was working for her as like a senior in college, I was like organizing her closet, and I would organize her kitchen for free, but it wasn't really for free because I would just like ask her questions, like, what's the difference between an agent and a manager? And she's like, no one knows. And then she hooked me up with a couple of, I was like, can I just like meet some people in the industry? And one person that I met was the production coordinator for the Goldbergs, who then hired me as an office PA. And then I was the assistant to Jeff Garland, one of the actors on the Goldbergs, and that's when we got the call for One Day at a Time. So we worked on One Day at a Time for 3 seasons. We worked on The Bold Type, which is a freeform show. We worked on a freeform show that you'll never see because it's dead with Amy. And it's not her fault. It's probably more ours. And then now we're on the Great North. I already said that. Thank you.
So clearly you guys have all come in from different angles and you all have different kinds of connections that you've made. Which of the connections that you've made have formed the relationships that have propelled you into your career? Which kind of relationships do you wish you had more of? And if any of you have representation, how is that relationship propelling you forward in your career?
I will start. The job on Grimm actually is what helped me get a job here. After I did season 5 of Grimm as a set PA, I was honest with some producers. I'm like, hey, I want to write. Being on set doesn't really give you the chance to write because I was working like 60, 70 hours on set. And you're just not a person when you're, that many hours. So I got in the office in season 6 and the UPM was like, well, give me your resume. I'll forward it to some friends of mine in LA, and that's what got me an office PA job down here in LA. And from there, I'm still in contact with that producer that he sent that resume to. I became her assistant. She was a line producer on the show. She gave me a recommendation that helped me get the job that I have now. And then the other thing I would say is assistants, honestly. Besides that producer, most of the other jobs I've gotten are because of other assistants. Because I feel like, especially here, I feel like the assistant community, we kind of try to look out for each other. So, if I tell a friend, hey, I'm looking for a job, I feel like we try to look out for each other. So that's been really helpful for me, at least, I think. I can't speak about management because I don't have the rest right now, so.
I think it's always really random how I got connected to someone. It was always some like friend of a friend. I think that happens a lot out here. It's like actually people you don't even expect, people who aren't as high up as you'd want to maybe network with, and they're the ones who are able to help you. I'm trying to think what got me my stuff. Yeah, it was some girl who was interning at MTV and told her boss I was funny and showed her videos, and then I had a meeting with her. That lady got me the manager, that manager got me the commercial agent, and it was all from these random different connections. The most important now, in terms of who I'd like to network more with, I'm down to be friends with anybody, like a set PA, anything like that. And I think it's interesting, network versus like friendship and stuff, because it does get blurred and confusing. And the real power, I do have reps, so that's good. Getting to know as many agents or managers is probably only going to help you if you want to be a writer. But directors and actors are like the ones. They are the gatekeepers. I'm friends with I'm working with a lot of executives, a lot of producers, and they technically have a lot of clout, but we're all together waiting on directors and actors. And the directors and actors who have read my stuff and have reached out, those were by far the most helpful connections. So if you can meet people, even maybe at the beginning, like when you're young and there's aspiring directors, those people really end up having a lot of power
to potentially attach themselves to your projects?
Yeah, yeah. What I learned about like this year is like attaching, and now we hear it a lot with the ATA, WGA stuff, but packaging. Like, it's so crazy to me how these people I thought were really famous or I'm real fans of, they can't secure financing. Some of your favorite actors still seem to not be big enough to get studios to put money behind them, and there is only like a handful of directors. I shouldn't say handful, but it's a smaller list than you'd think of just directors and actors who, once they attach themselves to a project, whether it's already at a studio, a company with a writer, that's the most likely way of getting made. Because as I'm sure you know, most things don't get made at all. But you can still get paid for it.
I think the most important relationships that I've had, as you've seen, nobody up here really, well, except for the two of you, walk similar paths to getting to where we are. And you know, in that, I've been lucky enough to know a lot of showrunner assistants. I've been lucky enough to know the people who worked for Dan and worked with his general group of people. So we've been able to get a lot of advice from people who have walked similar footsteps. That's been very helpful to me. In terms of people I'd like to know, I think Cody hit the nail on the head. Directors, actors, go shoot stuff on the weekends. If you have a 5-minute short idea, bang it out, go shoot it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people go in for a meeting, just a general even, because some producer liked a short of theirs that they were passed through, through whoever. So, put yourself out there. If you have a funny idea, you want to get something on film, go do it.
I think kind of as stated before, sorry, I'm still dealing with the fact that I didn't make the 35 under 35 list.
I'm so sorry.
Rocked my world. I think, as I said, Gloria was sort of huge for both of our careers, and I think that wasn't just like, oh, she really liked us. It was after, in the subsequent years after graduating, we both, in different capacities, worked for her, then worked for people who she was friends with, and kind of like, it's not enough, especially when you're young and hungry, to just like really want it and to ask people for things. You have to show them. It's like it's very annoying in the entertainment industry in particular because they really expect you to do a lot of free work. But sometimes, and then usually if you're however many more like things you can add to your identity, like they expect you to do free work for longer. But sometimes it does pay off when you get the right people. And then I would like to say something a little bit about our reps. I don't know how much I can, but anyway, I just want to say the first, well, it is kind of, the first rep that we had, the first, oh, all right, I don't want to steal your story, our story, but reps are super important, obviously everybody knows that. We signed with the very first rep we met with, which I think is super common, because it's really hard to even get those meetings. And the first rep that we signed with ended up being the very first, kind of actually set the tone ahead of the curve, Me Too. And he didn't get us anywhere really or help us at all. But when we said we had an agent at ICM, people took us seriously, I think. So sometimes it's worth signing with a pervert, just kidding, that's not the point of the story. Reps are really fucking hard to get, and maybe your first rep you don't super get along with, but sometimes I think perverts aside, like you can sometimes, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but I think maybe your first rep won't always be the rep that you get along with the best, but if it kind of gets your foot in the door, it's okay to attach yourself to somebody who maybe isn't perfect for you, because then you get your foot in the door, you get the ball rolling, and then you can fire them. It's not personal.
It's like dating.
It's just like
dating. It might not be your husband or your wife.
Right. Whenever you're dating, keep your eye out for somebody else.
That's true. I always feel bad going after Michelle because it's just the same thing. But I would say the best connections that I've had in the industry, writers are kind of my favorite people. Like I just really like writers. I usually like writers' personalities. Like we all are like a little self-deprecating all the time. And I just, every time I walk into a writer's room, I'm like, I'm probably gonna love all of you. And it's been a lot of fun working on a lot of different shows because I feel like we've been able to like pick up little Easter eggs along the way and get writers. And having gone from comedy to drama, we have writers we're friends with in drama and comedy, and it's really cool to see them succeed. And I think that like a good mindset to go into it is like it's not competition. It's other people that you want to succeed just like you want. It's it's not like, oh, you're gonna get that job, you're gonna get it over me. It's because they were better for the job. There's gonna be a job you're better for. So the more connections that I want, I'd like to know more writers. But I would also like to know more actors. So if you guys know actors, like I always am like, there's so many actors. And then when I'm working on a show and they're like, do you have any actor suggestions? I'm like, no, I don't know, Jennifer Lawrence, I don't know, I think it's really helpful to have talent that is your friends that you feel really strongly about, because also you can help them get in the door and they can help you. So just like be friends with everybody.
What attributes do you guys bring to the room? How do you succeed in a room? What does it take to be a successful participant in a writer's room? You know.
I think my hair was on there.
It wasn't mine, it freaked me out.
It's funny because today we were saying, because you were like, oh, you guys have risen really quickly, and we're like, I guess we have, but we have repeated type. Like we did executive story editor for 2 seasons, and then we've done co-producer now for 2 seasons. So it does. I mean, we have gone faster, I guess, in that we just keep getting jobs, and we started pretty early. But I think that what we were talking about today is one of the main things in a writer's room is that we think we bring is often people as writers, I think that you have to kind of think you're the shit and that your ideas are amazing, but you have to remember that you are there to do the showrunner's vision, and you can pretty much only say once if you feel like they're going in the wrong direction, and then you just gotta like hop on their boat and go with them. Because if you keep being like, well, this is crazy, no one's gonna like this, and this is so upsetting, and this is not the show I would make, it's not the show you would make, and that's why you're not the showrunner. So I would say just kind of being, like having your voice be heard, because that's why you're hired, but also just being knowing that you're in a supportive role and you are writing their show.
Yeah, I think very, very well said. And I think just along with that, again, like we're all hired because of what we individually bring to the table, but we're also all hired because we can work as part of a team. And it's really hard also, as I think as writers, it's like the most, I mean actors probably too, but it's like the most dramatic like self-loathing and kind of like self-love, where you're like, I'm a genius and also everyone hates me. But I think it's really important not to be precious about your own ideas, even if you think like this idea is fucking excellent and would like make this show amazing. At the end of the day, like it doesn't really matter, because hopefully if you do this job well for them, then you'll keep rising in the ranks, and then you'll get to have your own show and boss everybody around. And I think that is like the mistake that I see, and that we definitely made as staff writers, and that you see a lot of staff writers make, is that you kind of forget why you're actually there, which isn't just to like shine and be a star, it's to collaboratively make a project, which is different than feature writing. So yeah, I guess that's all.
Well, great segue, because now we're going to segue right into Cody. You are a feature writer primarily, unless correct me wrong.
Only.
Okay, there we go. And you had a script that made it onto the Blacklist. What was that process like, and how has that propelled you into your career? How did you get a script onto the Blacklist? Walk us through that process.
Yeah, I think that's more what it is, because I think people think, maybe it is like this for some people, but like you get on the Blacklist and then you get what's called the Couch and Water Bottle Tour, where you meet all the executives, 70% of the executives in town, and they call it that because you sit on a couch and they offer you free water. And then, but for me, it was, I got on the Blacklist because I had already done that. The script went out, then all the meetings happened, then all the agency signing meetings happened, then the Blacklist happened. So and all my deals, all the movie deals I mentioned before, were all solidified by before the time the Blacklist happened. I think it got me more what they call general meetings after the Blacklist, maybe. But it was a process of, again, really random person, like my TA from a screenwriting class at Boston University later became my roommate. He was an assistant for a guy named Ben LeClaire, a producer. He sent my script, my friend, my roommate sent my script drudge to Ben LeClaire. Ben LeClaire sent it to all the agencies, and that's when, like all the stuff I said about True TV and all that stuff, I didn't really break in until that. That's when everything changed. And all it took was like one producer vouching for me. And it's like those agents, it was so ridiculous. It was like their assistants probably wouldn't have even gotten like a coffee with me a couple weeks prior. And then I write the script and their bosses are pitching you on why to sign with them. And it happened so fast, and I'm not special, I saw this happen a lot to different writers who either are getting on the blacklist or not, and they put rooms together at different agencies, and you have to pick which you think is going to work for you. There's obviously rumors that some of the really fancy places might not, they might drop a lot of celebrity names in the meeting but not care as much about you. The advice people get on reps, I think, is person over place. Because it's easy. I've seen a lot of friends go with the really, really shiny places and end up having to leave. And now it's a really weird time with agents and managers. So maybe your best bet, if you're writing, is looking into management representation right now.
Got it. So this next question is for Jackie and Jake, and I'd love to know how you have made yourself stand out in the shows that you've worked on, and what you feel like you bring to these teams, and what other people who are in similar positions should aspire to do in your shoes.
One of my college professors gave me good advice, and I think it kind of builds on what you guys were saying. When you get into a writer's room or near a writer's room, be a sniper, not a machine gun. Don't blurt out every idea that you have. I understand the angst to want to be taken seriously. You don't want to be seen as an assistant. Nobody does. But if you blurt out every note that you have, it starts to sound like white noise, and it just gets a little bit annoying. So go with your best ideas. Build the relationships, and then if you know the room is discussing X storyline, when the room breaks, go to a writer that you're close with, go to your boss, say, hey, I was thinking about this idea, this storyline. I have this one experience, tell a story, and if you do that every now and then, and they begin to trust your input, then you'll start to be taken a little bit more seriously. So I think that's that, and stay late, say yes to drinks, unless, like you said, unless it's a pervert. Go meet people. A lot of the time that I've spent being able to pitch has been staying until midnight in the editing days, and that's when you get to know your bosses. It's when you get to know the room. You get that kind of access for a couple of years. Maybe take advantage of it. Don't try to go home early.
For me, I think being flexible has really been something that I think has made me stand out. And I think before I was in this industry, I was a teacher, so I am very calm, I think. So things change so often on shows that you work with, and being able to recognize that things are going to change, and being able to handle it and not let other people see that you're flustered. So I'm very good at no one knows that I'm flustered about something. I can keep that to myself. That and just doing the work. People see that you are good at your job. They want to help you. That has been my experience. I know that I can trust Jackie to do X, Y, and Z, and then people are like, what do you want to do? How can I help you? So at the end of the day, let your work speak for you. So that's what I think, yeah.
I just want to know what you guys are looking forward to in 2020 with your careers. What are you watching? Oscar favorites. Give us some tidbits about you.
Well, I'm watching The Circle, which is a reality show on Netflix, but I can't stop watching. It's so good. But other than that, I don't know what else I'm Dairy Girls is really good. It's so good. I also have been binging Younger. I don't know why anyone didn't tell me about that, because it's so good.
Hilary Duff.
No, it did. You loved it. Wow, I didn't get as big a response on it. Loved you. That's so mean. So cute, yeah. those are the shows I'm watching. And for 2020, I'm excited. I'm really excited for this show to come out. It's always weird to work on a new show because this is a new show, so none of you've seen it yet. And it's like for a year, you're like, I'm working on a show, I promise. And then finally it comes out, and you can feel like you can tell people to watch it. So I'm really excited to see how it goes because I know Fox is really pushing their animation slate.
The Great North on Fox.
The Great North on Fox. Watch
Okay.
it. Love it.
Great.
Love it.
In 8 months to a year.
In 8 months to a year. Animation takes forever. Who knew? Not me. Everybody told me that. And I was like, it's gonna fly by. It's a lot. I love my job. But the last thing I just want to say really quickly, because something that an old boss said to me that really rocked my world, because I feel like often when you're coming up the ranks, you either fall on the like, I'm the fucking shit spectrum, or the imposter syndrome, which is me, where I'm like, I just moved here and I'm figuring it out. And one time I introduced myself, I promise I'm not name dropping, it's just I was going to say his name is Jeff Garland, he's an actor, and I know, too. And so I introduced myself to somebody and I was like, hi, I'm an assistant, Caroline, and he was like, never say that. You are not an assistant, you are a writer who is working as an assistant right now. And it like really touched me and rocked my world, and it just like changed my outlook on everything, and I was like, you're right! And then he's like, get me a coffee! And I was like,
I mean, who could follow that? I guess I started watching Watchmen, and I was like dying, loving it, and then I saw today that they're not doing a second season, so there was my boner. But I'm still in. I'm going to finish the first season, and I guess for 2020, I'm really excited about finally making 35 Under 35. So all the power to that.
Watching Watchmen. Has anyone seen Years and Years? Has anyone watched that show? Nobody knows about it, and it's amazing, and it's so depressing and awful. But go
What's
watch
it
it. It is on HBO.
Okay.
Coming to HBO Max. I'm looking forward to a promotion at work. I can't specify anything after checking with 20 people, but I'm looking forward to 2020.
Nice. Big, but nice. We love it. We love it.
I guess TV actually is what happened to me with Drudge is a biopic, so I ended up just getting every project I mentioned is a biopic now. That happens a lot, by the way. If you like write a script, they're like, then you're the guy who does this stuff now. So I'm looking forward this year to breaking into specifically developing TV show ideas and moving into TV, which is definitely where it's at these days. Shows that I'm watching now, I would like to make stuff like Succession, right? I'm looking forward to Search Party is coming back. I like those dramedies, or those half-hour dramedies. They're making more half-hour dramas now, which is cool. That's the really cool thing. All your weird ideas that networks wouldn't make, there are places now. There is HBO Max, which is buying a million things a day. There's like all these different companies that are willing to do weirder things in television nowadays. It's probably the best time ever in history to work for TV, and maybe one of the worst for film.
Okay. What I'm watching right now, I'm watching Spinning Out on Netflix. I had dreams as a kid to be a figure skater. That never was going to happen, but so I love that show. I'm also into Cheer. So good. I'm on episode 3. Don't tell me anything. I need to finish it. It's so good. I'm ready for Sex Education to come out. Season 2 is coming out tomorrow. Yes, it's on my calendar. And then for 2020, my mantra this year is, this is the last year that I'm going to be an assistant. So I will be getting stabbed. Putting it out in the university is going to happen. And I'm going to get a rep. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Give it up.